Five-star commits and signees are not the usual for Iowa football, but this one really hurts in regards to losing one to Alabama. We will discuss it for the next 60 minutes. Kaden Proctor flips from Iowa to Bama. Of course, this is Hawkeyes Live right here, the voice of college football. Jump on in for the next 60. Leave those comments and questions in the live chat for Corey, Bratta, and myself. Join Corey's work, of course, at From the Hawkeye of the Storm. Hey, Corey.
Hey, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Not the best of days for Iowa fans because this guy, to give you some outside perspective on how well thought of Kaden Proctor is, and I don't need to tell you this to further his profile, but I was having a discussion on our Miami show last week, and we weren't even discussing Kaden Proctor because Miami had no involvement in his recruitment, but just our analyst Cam Underwood was making comparisons, and then he was talking about two of the top 5 offensive tackles in the country leaning heavily toward Miami, and he was talking about their great skill set, but said they're nowhere close to that Kaden Proctor out of Iowa. He is like off the charts, great ceiling through the roof type of prospect.
Fans are not liking what you're saying right now, Mark. Look, so this news, I was notified that this was going to be happening. I was notified, I guess Sunday, was told early Sunday that his visit to Tuscaloosa was just unbelievable. I mean, that's the land. I'm not giving you a direct quote. I mean, I can do that, but I'm paraphrasing, of course. I was told by somebody inside a KADYN circle that the atmosphere at Tuscaloosa was just unbelievable. Now, some people are going to say that's lip service, right? That's just trying to explain why this happened, and perhaps that's KADYN circle trying to explain. I don't know. They don't need to defend the move. I mean, he's got every right to go where he wants. And I understand the fans that are frustrated. Look, I'm frustrated. I'm an Iowa fan, Mark. Kaden Proctor would have been the highest rated recruit in the history of Iowa football. He's the highest rated recruit in the history of the state of Iowa. And they lost him. That's all there is to it. I don't, as much as I don't want Brian Ferentz to be a part of this program next season, I don't blame Brian Ferentz. Do I think he plays a role? Sure. Absolutely. How could you not argue that the OC plays a role when you lose a guy like this? I know everybody wants to point at NIL and money, and you have every right to believe that NIL was the major factor. I can tell you that the inside sources, his circle, have been adamant, Mark, that this decision was not about money. Now, what else? First of all, I want to address the elephant in the room. What else are they going to say, right? What else are they going to say? I want to acknowledge that. I'm not naive to that fact.
Absolutely.
But I just want to make it clear that is what they are saying. I said earlier today when I posted a video, it was actually recorded Sunday, released it today after the news became official. I said, don't shoot the messenger. But I'm just telling you that his camp has told me over and over and over and over and over again, this is not about money at all. You can believe it if you want to believe it. I'm not going to say whether I believe it or not. It is what it is. And I can tell you one thing, and I mentioned this on a show, was it yesterday, I think, when the Tegan Davis news broke that Iowa had flipped him from Eastern Illinois. The visit that Iowa conducted in Proctor's home last week was not good. All right. The word terrible was used. And whether that is what ultimately caused the change of heart. I mean, these visits were scheduled. Mark, you remember back in the season, Kaden went out to Eugene, and there were people freaking out about it then. But at that point, when he was out at Oregon, I was told he's still locked into Iowa. That's what I was told. He's still locked into Iowa. So the obvious question is, why are you taking visits? Well, if you want to explain it from that perspective, He's a 17-year-old 5-star recruit. You only get recruited once. He's being treated like a king. I've said that to a million people. He's being treated like a king. I mean, you had Deion Sanders' staff. Deion didn't come with him, but Deion Sanders' staff came up to Des Moines and took the family out to eat. I think it was 2 weeks ago. There's nothing wrong with it, Mark. That's part of the recruiting process. And I know that made fans uncomfortable, and this is the reason why it makes fans uncomfortable. Alabama's been to his home multiple times. So all I can tell you is, according to Kaden's camp, the Iowa visit last week in their home was awful. The visit down to Tuscaloosa this past weekend was incredible. The word vibe kept being used. The vibe down there is unmatched. The people, the atmosphere, no mention of money. Again, I'm sure there's dollar figures involved here. We understand that. Nobody's denying that. But for the record, their camp hasn't denied that, right? You're not going to obviously NIL is a big part of any recruits. I mean, especially 4- and 5-star kids, but certainly the number one tackle in the country. So those are the facts. That's what I've been told. And this news was not a surprise today, but it is a massive blow for anybody that says, "Whoa, you didn't want to be here. No big deal." I saw somebody, "Don't let the door hit you on the way out." Whatever. I mean, come on. First of all, respect the kid's decision. You don't have to like it. Respect the kid's decision. I don't like it. But you also have to understand that there are a number of factors at play here, and it's a blow. You just accept that it's a massive blow.
So let me attempt to interpret something, and you tell me if there's anything to it. So when I hear terrible visit, and we're talking about a recruit and a coaching staff that have a long-standing relationship, it's not like this was the first meeting, didn't go well. We're talking about a courtship that has gone on for a couple of years. So we're talking about established relationships. So I would think that there was either new information presented that he didn't like, or he wanted to hear new information presented that wasn't. If you follow me in any sort of way, and I'm not just talking about Brian Ferentz, I'm talking about just anything, because we're not talking about you met said person for the first time and you just didn't hit it off. These people have all interacted for a couple of years. So I would think that there's something that he wanted or needed or was looking for, and it wasn't delivered in some way.
I can tell you that, according to this source, Brian Ferentz was not a part of this visit. That's the first thing. There were 3 coaches there. Brian Ferentz was not one of them. So, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, right? Guy, you can't be 8 places at once. Now, I do find it a little bit odd, right? I would think this is my opinion, and again, I've not been in the recruiting world like these guys have been for as long as they have been, but one would think that this is the number 1 offensive tackle in the country. It's the number 1 recruit in your history. I would think, as long as the plan is to move forward with Brian as your OC, and I believe that is, at this point, I still have reason to believe that probably is, I would go in there with whoever was his primary recruiter, and I don't know if that was, I don't know that was George Barnett. From what I've been told, Barnett was not real involved over the last couple months with Kaden Proctor, which is also very odd, given the fact that he's the O-line coach. I'd go in there with Kirk Ferentz. I'd go in there with Brian Ferentz. I'd probably go in there with George Barnett. Now, again, I don't know the history of who was recruiting Kaden from the beginning, etc. But I can tell you the visit as described to me was very awkward, and there was very little said, Mark. So you're talking about things, not the right things being said. I was told that there was very little said, and that it was a very uncomfortable visit, which is, perplexing to an extent, given the fact that you don't think I was well aware that Oregon had been in that home, hours or days prior, that Nick Saban and Alabama had been. I mean, come on. So I would think that Iowa would be bringing everything to the table the last week heading into signing day.
So I know how ridiculous this may sound from someone who's not part of the recruiting process, is not an expert in any such way, conjecturing what was failed to have been brought by guys that have done this for years and done it successfully for years. But of course, when you know that you are trying to, so you're at the disadvantage. The other party has the leverage. Kaden Proctor has all the leverage in the world. You have little leverage. You do have a relationship. That you have to go in with a game plan. You have to anticipate what could be the issues, or what could be offered by others, or what could be the drawing card of others that we need to be able to counter. What is unique about what we can deliver? You need to have a game plan of how to take the conversation. So when you say there was little said, I just can't imagine that.
I can't either. I can't either. Listen, when it was described to me, that was my reaction as well. I'm thinking, what? What does that mean? That was the explanation I was given. So again, this is up for, interpretation. If people want to not trust that source, I can tell you that I don't know how you can get to a much more to the point source, if you will. I don't know that this individual is. He would know, right? So unless he's just not telling the truth, you have every right to believe that that's the case. That's fine, but it was disturbing to me. So I'm not going to indict Iowa for it because I wasn't there. I guarantee you, if you ask Kirk Ferentz, he's going to give you a different rendition of what happened during that at-home visit. I mean, he just will. And for the record, Kirk Ferentz was there. I see somebody in the chat says, well, Kirk Ferentz should have been there. He was there. I'm not implying that he wasn't there. I'm saying Brian Ferentz was not there. So I'm not going to say who the other two coaches were because at this point I know that it matters. But Kirk Ferentz was there, as he should have been. It's just odd to me if that happened. I would like to know why it happened. Was it a matter of Iowa felt like Kaden was giving them the runaround? Because he was going to all these other schools and they just kind of felt like prideful and upset and hurt by it. I don't know. I can't imagine if we're still allowing, if you're allowing pride to get in between a situation like this, where you're talking about a generational guy, then you shouldn't be in the business. So I'd like to think that's not what it was. Was it Iowa felt like they had him on lock? They didn't have reason to worry. Again, how could you feel that way? Even if you had every indication, like if he never took any visits, he's still the number one offensive tackle in the U.S. So I don't have an explanation for it, but that's what I've been told, and it is what it is.
So generally, these football players are looking for a few things. Everyone's different. Everyone has a different priority list and different weights to the priority list. But generally, aside from if there's a location draw or there's a part of the country draw, which is connected, of course, if there's you can't account for just having a right feel about a place or being drawn to certain relationships that were built that you just came to trust or distrust or like or dislike a position coach, a head coach, etc. Beyond that, we're talking about a player who, if all goes as expected, not even if it goes well, if it goes as expected, is going to be playing on Sundays for 10 years. Okay. That we're talking about money / NIL in some fashion being some factor, whether that's 1 or 10 on the scale of 1 to 10. Winning being a portion. What is the expectancy of winning? Can I win championships here? And again, depending on the player, how important that is. And then also the development toward playing in the NFL. So even if you're a 5-star and you're considered the best at your position, you still want to know that you're going to be developed in the very best way to be not just, Kaden Proctor could probably sleepwalk through a career for the next 3 years and be a 4th-round draft pick. But he doesn't want to be a 4th-round draft pick. He wants to be groomed to be the best. And so all those buckets weigh in to some degree. And Alabama, of course, checks all those boxes. Iowa just depending on perspective. But the winning portion of it and the winning on his side of the football is, of course, connected to the failures on that side of the football. And if he's done any bit of homework, which even if he hasn't watched the games, obviously somebody has presented him their offense is terrible.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's a
hit them with a lot of questions to say, are you going to do anything about this offense? What does this offense, what are the plans? What is this offense going to look like next season?
That is a fair point, Mark. That's an absolutely fair point when you bring up the fact that, and I said at the outset, I'm not placing all this on Brian, but to think that the Iowa coaching staff doesn't share in the blame when you lose a recruit this late in the process. I mean, I know there are plenty of people out there, Mark, who just believe that Kaden's a snake and that he backstabbed. I've seen all these things. He backstabbed Iowa and all these things. So no accountability to the Iowa coaches for not sealing the deal. Just blame on the young man who decided to flip. That's your prerogative if you feel that way. But you brought up a great point. Even if Brian Ferentz, who has been under well-deserved scrutiny over the last 2 years, even if he was not part of the reason due to his recruitment, how he recruited, his lack of recruitment of Kaden Proctor in recent time, even if that's not at fault, the fact of the matter is what you just said is 100% valid. The offense sucks. And if you want to look at the differences between Iowa and Alabama, as you just brought up, the differences, first of all, Alabama is a franchise. I mean, the place is I don't know, the biggest blue blood in college football. What did they call that? Legacy. What's the word I'm thinking of? Dynasty. Dynasty. That's the word I'm trying to think of. It's a dynasty. But you're right, Mark. The Iowa defense, we've talked about this at length. The Iowa defense, the Iowa special teams, you're an offense away from being competitive at the national level, despite not being able to pull in the recruits that Alabama pulls in every year. I'm not saying they're going to go out and beat Alabama every year, but you're a play. I think we can both agree on this. If this offense is even top 50 in 2 years, they are a player for the college football playoff when it expands to 12 teams. Mm-hmm. So there's not that much of a gap when you consider the positive development that the select Iowa coaches have been able to accomplish here with underrated prospects. I mean, heck, I just pulled up, somebody sent this to me a day or two ago. I believe it was 2018. You know who the bottom 3 recruits, as far as the 247 Sports rating system goes, the bottom 3 recruits that Iowa signed in 2018? Riley Moss, Seth Benson, and Kayvon Merriweather. All 3 of those guys either been All-Americans or all Big Ten guys. So Iowa develops, but you know the other commonality with those 3 guys? They all play on defense. That's the commonality. So the point is, regardless of recruiting rankings, if you could just develop the way you develop offensively, or develop on offensively the way you develop on defense, this team is competitive on a national level. And if you can't do that, you better be able to recruit at that level. And this was an opportunity, an example of an opportunity where Iowa was able to make up for the lack of development at times offensively. And they've done a good job with individual linemen. I mean, taking nothing away from Kirk Ferentz and this staff. Tyler Linderbaum's a great example. Tristan Wirfs is a good example. But, you know, Wirfs was a pretty darn good prospect coming into college as well. But the point is, those units, they are in need at tackle. All right. They are, as we know, in need at wide receiver. They are in need at quarterback. Hopefully they sort of filled that need with Cade McNamara. So I know that I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but I think it's fair to bring up the offense's issues, and the accountability has to set with Brian Ferentz for that. And if you want to fool yourself and think that had nothing to do with Kaden Proctor's thought process, I don't know how it couldn't. How could it not have something to do with it, Mark? Because as you just brought up, the ineptitude offensively results in a lack of wins. There's a reason why Iowa didn't win 11 games this year. They won 7. And why they're playing in Music City and not in Miami. There's a reason, right? I mean, so I think it's all valid. I think we have this tendency in this world to want to pinpoint the blame on one person. And usually that's just not fair. There's multiple factors at play here. And I think this situation with Kaden Proctor encapsulates that notion. There are a lot of factors that were at play in his decision making.
Let's catch up with a couple super chats here. Erica, we appreciate you being here as always. Disappointing, but Kaden needs to do what he wants to do. I don't appreciate how it happened. He decommitted a day before signing day after 6 months. So, yes, it is his decision to make. It is his life. It's his career. He doesn't need to account or answer to anyone. But I do believe that Erica makes a great point in that while he's not obligated to make this, if he in fact just now made the decision and did not know until for sure that he was going to change his mind and make it official until now, then that's his business. But now with social media, these recruits are, they recognize that there are fans out there that are very engaged and emotionally involved in this, and they don't have to be, they should be cognizant of that to some degree. And yeah, to pull the rug out from under the Iowa fan base the day before National Signing Day isn't the best look there. We also have a super chat coming in from Steiny. If Brian Ferentz went to that visit, we would have lost 4 more recruits and 17 yards. You're on mute. Corey, you're on mute. You're muted.
Oh, that's probably a good thing.
We want to hear it all.
I don't approve of this message. I'm not endorsing the message. It just made me laugh. My secret name is not Steiny, but it did make me laugh.
Oh my goodness. I just don't know how we can get to another Iowa football season with Brian Ferentz running the show on offense. I just don't see how that can possibly be justified.
So let me get this straight. And I know you're looking at this from the outside and you're not claiming to have inside information on Kaden Proctor's decision, but from the outside perspective, you smell a rat here, as Kirk Ferentz would say. You think that there is reason to believe that Brian deserves some of the blame for this loss.
Well, again, even if though it's not direct, like he made a statement to Kaden that Kaden didn't like, something like that. Yes, by connection of, and again, let me backtrack to what I stated previously about each recruit has his priority list. Now we can fill in the blanks of what that priority list, we just don't know the order and to what degree each item is weighted, but obviously he wants to be successful. And this program is not successful to the degree that it should be successful based on, again, folks, just I know most of you were talking to the choir and speaking to the choir here, but my goodness, the more I do statistical analysis on all these games that are coming up in the playoffs and so forth, like I did a Michigan TCU breakdown, and I was comparing, okay, let's say the Michigan scoring offense is rated here and TCU's here. But beyond that, I wanted to look into where are all the teams ranked that Michigan compiled this yards per play statistic against, or this defensive yards per play, et cetera, et cetera. And all you do is run into Iowa 1, 2, or 3 in the nation defensively and run into them at the bottom 5 back everything offensively. It's incredible. There is no other program in the country like it.
So my question to you, Mark, because I think your perspective is great. I think it's sound. I think it's reasonable. I think it's valid. My question to you is, you know where Iowa. I mean, we talk about every single commitment that comes in every single week. We've talked about every single one of them. We've got 2 more to talk about this week because we're approaching signing day, and Iowa got a couple of flips themselves. But my question to you is, how big of a blow does the loss of a 5-star guy like Kaden Proctor, right? How big of a blow does it make to a class like this as a whole? because it's not often that Iowa gets a 5-star recruit. So it's hard to ask that question in most years because we'd just be playing with a fantasy world. But this is the reality. We go from Kaden Proctor probably shooting up. I mean, regardless of what the ranking systems say, Kaden Proctor made this class nationally relevant. Where does the class lie now?
So the first thing that comes to mind, because of Iowa being in a different recruiting type environment and class than, let's say, Ohio State, and because Ohio State's directly competing against Michigan, well, when they lose to Michigan, then they're battling for the same players. Ohio State's been winning that war by a significant gap, but they've lost 2 consecutive games, and there's a direct connection there to try to determine, okay, how is this costing? But Iowa, the one huge factor in this, I believe, from a long-term standpoint or an impactful standpoint, beyond just, okay, this guy could be a road grader and a great pass protector on the left side for 4 years or 3 years, is he's an in-state prospect. Iowa just didn't suddenly get into the mix with 3 other nationally prominent teams for someone out of Texas that plays offensive tackle, and they gave it a great shot and they lost him. This is homegrown, backyard, and he committed. And here we are only a day away from when the facts would have gone in, and he's suddenly at a place that, even though Kaden Proctor is special, he's not nearly as special at Alabama as he would be at Iowa.
I will say this, Tim Stevens in our chat. I see Tim's comment here. Let me find it here. No, this is not. This is also a Tim Stevens comment, but let me find the right comment here. Tim, very active in our chat this afternoon. I saw his name earlier, and I just want to make sure. This is a valid point. He brings up the number of offensive linemen leaving Alabama. They have been dealing with some attrition there.
Mm-hmm.
And correct me if I'm wrong, and you're on the Nationals. I know you probably don't follow recruiting like you could because you're all over the place. But correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't a 4-star just flip from Bama to Miami? Am I correct in saying that? I think I saw that yesterday, the day before.
Yeah, they lost a 4-star. They also lost Tommy Brockermeyer, who was, oh my goodness,
5-star.
he was in the Kaden Proctor range
Yes,
a couple of years ago. They just lost him to TCU.
Yes, they did. So this movement's going on all over the place. It is a little bit strange, and I know this is a conversation that can be held for a different day. It is a little bit strange, given Iowa's defense, given Iowa's special teams unit, given Kirk Ferentz's history as an offensive line coach, that Iowa can't land the bigger name offensive lineman prospects. Like they've had some good 4-star prospects. Some of them haven't worked out. I mean, they've got one this year coming. Kaden Proctor. Trevor Lauk is a guy who's a 4-star who's still committed right now. He's the highest rated prospect in the class, Mark. But it is. Do you find it at all odd that Iowa has not been able to actually seal the deal on a 5-star lineman since which I think Blake Larson? I'm trying to think Blake Larson, where he was back in the day, but we're talking like last 15 years. Is that strange to you at all?
Well, there's a reason people get excited about 5-stars. There's only about 35 to 40 of them walking the planet. It's a very exclusive club. 4-star athletes build programs like Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, just because 5-stars are so rare. 4-stars take us from anywhere from the 40th rated player in the country to about 450. So it's a much broader, wider class. Just not many of them out there. So I got to think that there are only 4 or 5 offensive linemen that are in that category each year. So I don't think it's alarming just because of the numbers break down.
I think what's alarming is the fact that Iowa hasn't been able to. They've had so much attrition along that offensive line in the last 4 to 5 years. That's what's alarming to me. The whole situation with David Cobb is just perplexing. Like nobody knows what's going on. I mean, I don't know what's going on. Maybe there's media people that are keeping that on the down low. Maybe that's the case. But he's not anywhere to be seen. I just saw a picture, was it 2 days ago, of Iowa's offensive line recruits all together at some get together. I didn't see David Davidkov unless I missed him. So I don't even know if he's not with the team anymore. He's not in the portal. He was a 4-star recruit a couple years ago, Mark. We mentioned Trevor Lauck this year, Connor Colby. He's he had a kind of a rough year. They ended up moving him back in to guard. But I mean, they need some of these guys to come along. The kid whose name always escapes me from why does his name always, why can't I ever think of his name, Mark? This is so strange. Let me look it up here because this is ridiculous.
I don't know who we're talking about.
Somebody tell me in the chat. It's a 4-star kid from, I think my house is coming down. Four-star kid from Norwalk. And I can't believe I'm not remembering his name. Somebody say it in the chat here in a second. But he has not seen any playing time. No, not Britt. Somebody's saying Britt in the chat. I'll think of it here. We can move on from this. But they have lost a lot of guys, and for various reasons. Some due to medical issues, some due to transfer. Some guys are just stuck, buried on the depth chart. Tyler Indris is the guy I'm thinking of. Considered a 4-star prospect by 247 back in the 2019 class. Hadn't seen time. Ezra Miller, 4-star recruit, same class, transferred to Nebraska. I've went through all this. You can go back on my channel and find segments of me talking about the offensive line attrition. It is odd. And I don't just blame one or two things. It's a series of issues, and it's caused issues up front.
You know what this causes me to want to do? Once August hits, I would love to come out there for a couple days, go to practice for as much as media is allowed to come to practice, and then go to the news conferences and try to, talk to some people and ask questions at the news conference at whatever point. I don't know if Kirk has a news conference once a week during fall camp or what the setup is, but
hey, you probably get in on the some of the Zoom press conferences, Mark.
True.
I believe we got Iowa players on Thursday. By the way, the depth chart did come out today for the Music City Bowl. Do we want to talk about that briefly?
Absolutely. Let's first remind everyone that our Iowa show here each and every Tuesday at 4:30 Central is brought to you by Gene Arthur Associates, the fine folks there at Gene Arthur Associates that were responsible, of course, for the Iowa-Nebraska ticket giveaway at Kinnick to conclude the season. So this is your place to go, www.jaainsurance.com. Get your instant quote right there. Who doesn't want to save on home, auto, motorcycle, boat, RV, any type of insurance you could possibly think of, life, health included, dental, and so forth? Again, I have dropped the link in the chat. I will do so again, www.jaainsurance.com. Fine folks at Gene Arthur Associates want to help you get the right fit for your insurance needs. I can't wait for the Music City Bowl. I just wish they were playing somebody else, but that's okay.
You can't wait for the think about has anybody thought about the difference between the Music City Bowl this year and the Music City Bowl last year?
I mean, it's probably going to be about 40 points aside. Yeah.
It's almost like the Music City Bowl got so tired of no defense last year that they overcompensated with the matchups this year and said, well, we just want defense. We don't want offense. That's literally, they went from all offense, no defense to all defense, no offense. So the depth charts came out today. We understand Keegan Johnson is headed to Kansas State. Have we even talked about that, Mark? I think we have. I think we talked about that last week.
Yes, we did. Yes.
Arlen Bruce did just come off a visit to Mississippi State. So he will likely go to a Power 5 program. All right.
Look at the job that you do. Even when they get in the transfer portal and leave Iowa, most likely leave Iowa, you're still tracking these guys.
Well, sure, of course. I don't think I'm exclusive in that. I think most people do that to an extent. Some people say exactly what that guy said earlier. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. But I wish nothing but the best for Arlen Bruce. Does anybody blame Arlen Bruce for leaving? Given not only the offensive struggles, but the lack of wide receiver development and involvement in the offense. So he just got off a visit from Mississippi State. we'll see. That would be an interesting move. What are your thoughts on him going down there? I mean, I obviously Mississippi State's dealing with a lot, with the passing of Mike Leach, but how does Arlen Bruce fit into? Just briefly, we want to move on from this, but how does Arlen Bruce fit into what you know about Mississippi State?
Well, what we know about Mississippi State has to be put on hold for what you just stated, because we're talking about a very, very unique offense, and the architect of that offense and offensive style passing away. So I don't know what direction they go. I wouldn't think that they would want to deviate far from that. So it's got to be an exciting stop for him to make in regards to a visit, thinking, okay, despite the tragedy here, just looking out for my own career, this is an opportunity. I see what happened with Charlie Jones. Well, Will Rogers is a tremendous quarterback there at Mississippi State, completes like 75% of his passes, throws the ball all over the field, threw for something like 36 touchdowns this past year. So it's an opportunity, much like what we saw Charlie Jones enjoy for Arlen Bruce.
Absolutely. And I can tell you for a certainty the Charlie Jones situation was a factor in Keegan Johnson and Arlen Bruce exploring other options. That's a fact. So, but my point is, he is gone. Keegan is gone. Neither of those guys will play in the bowl game. You've got, as you know, Gavin Williams in the portal. He is not listed on the depth chart. Alex Padilla not listed on the depth chart. You may say, well, obviously not going to be listed on the depth chart. One interesting piece here, Mark, is Dallas Cradith, or actually believe it's pronounced Cradith, recently entered the transfer portal. He is on the depth chart. I don't know that he's ever been on a game depth chart. He's been, I think, maybe on some preseason depth charts in the past, but he's a guy who stuck around here, 4 or 5 years? I think 4 years, got his degree and decided to explore other options. I applaud Kirk Ferentz for, apparently, it appears that he's allowing Dallas to remain on the team until he finds a new home. That is, in my opinion, the right thing to do with a guy like Dallas Cradith. And I understand maybe some other guys, like, Arlen Bruce, he's only been here 2 years. You don't want to be here, then you're not going to be with us for bowl prep. But Dallas has busted his butt. He's a former 4-star safety. Mark, we're talking about not developing. I mean, never developed into a starter here. He busted his butt for Iowa, graduated. He'll get a shot potentially to play, and that'd be great to see. Joey Labus is listed as your QB1. Carson May is the backup. So we're going to get a look at these guys, Mark.
Yes.
In the Music City Bowl.
One of the big reasons why I want to see this.
Yeah, Peaches is out, of course. Padilla's gone. And then the other question is, will we get a shot of Deuce Hogan at some point? I don't know if Durrell MVP is in our chat or a Kentucky fan, but Kentucky's roster better than I do. Deuce Hogan is not the starter, but would he be QB2 now with Levis being out?
He was not this season because Levis missed a start against Mississippi State, and that was not Deuce Hogan's game.
Well, I mean, is he QB2 now? Is what I'm saying. Was he?
Oh, I believe he is. Yeah.
Okay. So he's one play away.
Exactly. But
he's one injury away. So we could see Deuce Hogan versus Joe Labus. What would you say if that happens on December 31st, Mark?
I would say that fits in with the where we stand with college football these days.
Deuce Hogan goes for like 400 yards, and it's another Tennessee-Purdue game with Labus and Hogan. No, that I don't believe that will happen. But not a whole lot of other real significant changes on here. Monty Potabom is listed as your starting fullback. Turner Palisard, who had been the starter in place of Monty, not listed on. I can't remember if he got hurt, banged up against Nebraska. I know Eli Miller. Maybe he got hurt earlier than that. I know Eli Miller is listed on the depth chart. I think he saw some time late. Redshirt freshman out of Colorado, I believe. And Caleb Johnson, LaShawn Williams in that order at running back. Deontay Vines, Brody Brecht, Reganey, and Alec Wick, the walk-on wide receiver, all listed. I did see at right tackle, Nick DeYoung is listed as your starting right tackle with Jack Plum backing him up. Last time Nick DeYoung was Iowa's starting right tackle, I believe was in the Big Ten championship game last year, and that didn't go very well. So let's see, because this is a good Kentucky defensive front. Am I correct in saying that, Mari? Is a solid defensive front. They will test Iowa's offensive line in pass pro and
Absolutely.
run game.
They are not as good as they were last year. And I know that they had some players sit out last year on the defensive side of the ball, and were still able to eke out a win. Not quite as good this year. And I don't know what their opt-out situation beyond Will Levis and their starting running back, who's a really good player, Chris Rodriguez, also opting out as the 1,000-yard back.
I believe a couple of their wide receivers are gone too, entered the portal. But let me confirm that, Mark. I'm pretty sure they had multiple receivers enter the transfer portal. Give me just a second here.
In the meantime, we'll look up the super chat coming in, and thank you so much, Cole. You guys notice how bad Michigan is tampering. You guys notice how bad Michigan is tampering. So are we talking about the Ernest Hausman move from Nebraska as the linebacker, who was a really good freshman linebacker for Nebraska, going to Michigan? Is that where we're headed with that statement, Cole? I don't know.
I don't think that's where he's headed, because Ernest Hausman has been in the portal since the portal window opened, and I don't know why Michigan. How would they have tampered? Unless they could have talked to him before, I suppose. But Michigan's been involved in a lot of guys in the portal, correct?
Yeah, they have really fortified themselves on both sides of the ball in the trenches. Yes, really good players.
Ernest Hausman's a great ad, and by the way, he was at the Iowa State basketball game here recently, so Iowa wanted him too, with the loss of Justin Jacobs to Oregon. So and you can probably tell me who these guys are, because I haven't studied the Wildcat roster yet. Chauncey Magwood. You know anything about him?
I don't.
Kentucky wide receivers transferring to UCF. Chris Lewis, Kentucky wide receiver, transferring to Troy. DeMarcus Harris is in the portal, Kentucky wide receiver. DeMonte Crooms, Kentucky wide receiver, in the portal. They've got 4 wide receivers in the transfer portal. I'm assuming at least 1 or 2 of those guys were guys that got playing time. So, both of these teams are dealing with a lot of attrition via the portal, as most teams are at this point.
None of those players caught more than 5 or 6 passes.
Okay.
All their players that caught 45, 31, 19, 35 passes. So 45, 35, 31, 19, Tavion Robinson, Berrien Brown, Dane Key, Jordan Dingle. Those are their top pass catchers. Now, Tavion Robinson, I'm very familiar with. He's an excellent player. So is Berrien Brown and Dane Key. Look out for those guys. I guess they're still playing.
And apparently Tanner, was it Bowles or Bowles?
Bowles. Yep.
Okay. He Kentucky guy, right? And or excuse me,
yep.
Alabama guy, and he's transferring into Kentucky. So on a side note, but no other real surprises to me on the depth chart. Obviously, I'm surprised people don't know this. I'm not making fun of people who don't know it, but I'm surprised people were not aware of this. I've had multiple people ask me, can Cade McNamara and Eric All play? If they were healthy, could they have played in the bowl game? No. So the answer to that question is no, right? Assuming both they'll enroll in the spring. And again, they're not healthy anyways. So Iowa, I asked Kirk Ferentz that question 2 weeks ago. I had said, is there a possibility, given some of the depth issues, that somebody in the transfer portal could end up playing? And he said it's a possibility, and we're seeing that with Dallas Craddock listed. And again, his circumstances may be a little bit different than these other guys, but you're likely going to see a heavy dose of Xavier Wampa, Mark. That's one thing we didn't talk about either. We should probably talk about it towards the end of the show. Kayvon Merriweather opted out of the bowl game. So he is headed to the draft, will not play in the Music City Bowl. That gives an opportunity to Xavier Wampa. As of right now on this depth chart, you've got Sebastian Castro, who filled in for Cooper DeJean at Cash admirably throughout the year. Right now, Castro is listed as your starting strong safety, with Dallas Craddock as the backup. Quinn Schulte, Xavier Wampa at free. I don't know how much, that'd be a better question for Don Patterson. How easy is it for a guy like Wampa to play strong or free? Certainly different criteria, different assignments involved there, responsibilities. So we'll see. I will be surprised if we don't see Schulte and Wampa on the field at the same time. And I say that too, assuming that Castro is needed at corner. I mean, if Castro goes to, at Cash, if Castro goes to Cash, which means DeJean is at corner, it's either Craddoth or Xavier Wampa at free safety, unless you're playing a true freshman like Cohen and Tringer, or, maybe a Jackson Rexroth. So, yeah, intriguing. There's no reason not to embrace playing the young guys, Mark. Like, unless the only way you don't embrace it, I guess, if you're Kirk Ferentz and you feel the need to get to 8 wins to further defend keeping Brian Ferentz on staff. Like, that would be the only way, Mark. If he's just concerned with, we got to get to 8 wins, we got to figure out a way to look good, get to 8 wins, then I could see him not wanting to do that. But if our concern is the future and we have a firm outlook on the future, either with or with Brian, you know where I stand on that, then you play the young guys here. I mean, you're going to reward the older guys. I mean, like Sam Laporta, Jack Campbell, you're not going to bench those guys. Obviously, those guys deserve to play if they want to play. A lot of guys in their positions are going to be draft picks, high draft picks, wouldn't play. But it sounds like they're going to play. So you reward those guys. But at other positions of question, play the young guys. The one exception may be Dallas Craddoth. I just want to see that kid have success. He's a good kid. I made a point. He's one of, I think he's the only one I requested at Iowa Media Day last fall, because I just found his story intriguing, given the fact he had number of offers from a number of schools, 4-star recruit, and has never seen the field. He's stuck with it, which is so rare, as you know, Mark, in this day and age of the transfer portal and NIL and whatnot. He's stuck with it. I believe he credited his mom for that stick-to-itiveness, and those are just feel-good stories. So I hope the best for him, but it'll be good to see some of the younger guys compete.
Yeah, there is going to be a handful of times next season, if it's much like this season, that Kirk is going to have to lean on last season's wins. So 8 is going to sound better than 7.
So you're telling me you expect him not to embrace the young guys? He doesn't really have, some of these positions he doesn't have a choice, right? I mean, quarterback doesn't have a choice because Spencer Petras ain't growing a new arm between now and then. And Alex Padilla is not withdrawing from the portal. So, now, by the way, it's been crickets from Alex Padilla's camp. I have not heard anything about him visiting other schools. That is a surprising thing so far. Maybe he's just keeping on the down low. I would think, we've talked about this in the past too, Mark. I would think somebody would be interested in Alex Padilla. He's put together some decent tape. I'm not saying he's going to transfer and be a starter to Power 5. But, Deuce Hogan found a home at the Power 5 level, albeit as a walk-on, right? But I could see Alex Padilla transferring to a MAC school and competing for the starting job. Sure. Why not? And I've just not heard anything. So that surprises me a little bit. But we got time.
All right. We're here on a Tuesday, and we're here every Tuesday, folks. So make it on back next week, every Tuesday here at 5:30 Eastern, 4:30 Central with Corey, and catch his complete work at From the Hawkeye of the Storm, including, of course, National Signing Day coming up on a Wednesday. So, Corey, did I get the time right? Iowa fans, you want to join Corey throughout the afternoon on Wednesday at From the Hawkeye of the Storm.
Mark, because you do a lot, right? You're one of the busiest guys in this business that I'm aware of, right? Hardest working, busiest guys. I'll give you that. You are aware that when you do enough live streams and shows, at times it is not as enjoyable as it once was. I'm not saying that you don't enjoy what you do. I'm just saying there are times where you're tired, and I feel the same way. And this show tomorrow, I am excited for. And I know you're going to be doing some National Signing Day stuff. So anybody who wants to catch the national landscape, I think you're live, 2 to 5 tomorrow on your main channel?
2 to 5, and then 8:30 until who knows when. So that's Eastern time.
So I'll be live at 1. We'll be going 1 to 5, talking exclusively about and with Iowa signees. So I want to make this clear. I am as excited for this show as I've been for any programming. No offense to Don Patterson. Love the guy. But for any programming that I can remember, because we have got...
And I'll take no offense to that either.
Yes. Or Gary Close, our back. I love Gary. But we have got... This is going to be a long show, Mark. 4 hours. We've got a number of Iowa signees who are going to be joining the show. I mean, we're talking every hour, multiple signees throughout the 4-hour period, jumping on the show to talk about their decision, to talk about where they stand, and when they're coming to Iowa, and just everything. It's going to be a fun show. We're going to take calls, take chats, take questions. And we'll break down the whole class. We do need to touch on this, Mark, before we. I know you probably have something to add here to finish things off. And I know we got a chat here from Cole. We should mention that Iowa did receive a commitment today, a flip from TERRELL Washington Jr., previously a Purdue commit. He decommitted after Coach Braum left. So he's a guy who gives you some versatility. Somebody earlier reached out to me and said, "Hey, how about a Tyrone Tracy comparison?" That's not too bad. I mean, I've watched as much tape of TERRELL Washington at this point. I mean, it just, this news of him visiting Iowa and now committing today has kind of come at us fast. But it's a good ad. Iowa needs help at the skill position spots. There's no question about it. They added Kamari Moulton late in the cycle at running back. He's an undersized kid from Florida. TERRELL Washington will give them. He's a Texas kid. Will give them some good depth. And, does he end up playing running back? Does he end up playing receiver? He's probably a back at the Big Ten level. Good ad again, previously committed to Purdue. Good ad for Iowa. And they also got a commitment 2 days ago from a guy named TEEGAN Davis from Illinois, from Princeton, Illinois. And he's an athletic kid, completely under the radar. I believe I haven't talked to TEEGAN yet, one other offer, and that was the school that he was committed to, and that's Eastern Illinois. And he's coming here to likely be a defensive back, Mark. He was a quarterback in high school as well as a defensive back, kind of a bigger kid. He played a lot of corner in high school. He's 6'2", 180. But Phil Parker, we just talked about that earlier in the show. He's got a history of these no-name kids. Kayvon Merriweather was a better basketball recruit, Mark, and he's going to leave in here as he's an All-American, according to some. So you trust Phil Parker to identify these guys late in cycles and perhaps a diamond in the rough in both of these kids.
Phil Parker obviously goes to work, does his job, is responsible for what he's responsible for, and I'm sure takes the attitude that I can only control what I can control. Successful people do that. You got to wonder, though, what's going through his mind at times, just thinking, okay, a little help, guys, just a little help. Super chat coming in from Cole. Any new information on if Brian is staying or leaving?
Can you imagine, just real quick before we address that question, I don't have any new information to share on that. Can you imagine, Mark, if Phil Parker announced tomorrow that he's taking the head coach? What's a Power 5 job that's open right now? I know there's not many.
Power 5 job open?
Are there any open jobs right now?
They've all closed up.
Yeah, there can't be before signing day, I guess.
Yeah, they're closed down.
Okay, well, that's crisis averted. But imagine if, say, tomorrow, Deion Sanders decides to hop on a plane and move to Venezuela, and all of a sudden the Colorado job opens up, and Phil Parker announces he's headed to Boulder. What is the climate with Iowa fans? Like, given the reaction today on Twitter, I mean, people go way overboard, and I certainly don't. I condemn any actions that are abusive and towards a 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid making a decision. It's inappropriate. But can you imagine if Phil Parker left this program, or if he said he was retiring? I think he's a little early to retire, a little young to retire. But if he left all of a sudden, what would be the feel? Can you imagine that, Mark? That's how fragile. I mean, I say fragile. Everybody talks about stability, and this is Iowa football, and it's the epitome of stability.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You're one move away from, I think, panic. I think people are panicking here. So,
you're right. You're right.
I don't think it's happening.
He's been the defensive coordinator since when?
So when did Norm walk away? 2000. I want to say like 2011, early 2010s.
So life goes on. They've been successful without him, but
he's been here. Well, you're right. I mean, they've not as the OC. He was DB's coach since I think Kirk got here. So he's been on the staff this entire time. But you're right. Different OC with Norm.
All right, folks. We so much appreciate you being here. And one more time here. This is brought to you by our Hawkeye show here every Tuesday by Gene Arthur Associates. we all want to save on insurance, and we all have to have it. So whether that's home, auto, motorcycle, boat, RV, any type of insurance coverage you could imagine, the folks at Gene Arthur Associates are ready to service you. Just go to the live chat. I'll drop the link again, www.jaainsurance.com. Why not spend just a few seconds to fill out an instant quote and get your quote on insurance? And you can find that link in the description section of all the videos here at the Voice of College Football, Iowa. Otherwise, join Corey at 1 Central.
4 hours of pure joy, Mark. And oh, by the way, let me just say this. Haven't broadcast this yet. Haven't announced this yet. I'll go ahead and announce it on here because you're a good guy, Mark. At 7:30 tomorrow, approximately 7:30 a.m. Central Time, we will be broadcasting live the official signing of the national letter of intent for Iowa commit Maddox Borcherding Johnson. So the defensive tackle from Norwalk will have that stream going live at approximately 7:30. So it'll be there's a lot of, despite the Kaden Proctor story, and I know it's unfortunate for Iowa fans, there's a lot of joy going around for these commits tomorrow. And I hope that Iowa fans, as well as you can, I know it's hard, but as best you can, be happy for the kids, congratulate them on social media. And I mean, these are life-changing moments for a lot of these young people. So we'll have Maddox's signing live here on the channel, approximately 7:30 a.m. Central Time tomorrow. And then we'll have the live show from 1 to 5.
That is very cool. I look forward to that. I will watch it after the fact. I will not be watching that live, I don't think. Maybe I will be. All right, folks, make it a habit every Tuesday at 4:30 Central. Hawkeyes Live right here at the Voice of College Football. Come on back next week. Bring some friends with you. And, of course, join Corey on a regular basis from the Hawkeye of the Storm, but specifically National Signing Day, 1 Central Time. Corey, appreciate you doing this, as always.
I know there's some negative storylines, Mark, but this is a fun show. We have plenty to talk about, and next week we'll be officially previewing a game on the 31st. So have a great week. Enjoy signing day, and we'll see everybody tomorrow.